want to shed a spotlight on the importance of father-daughter relationships everywhere. We are also in this event honoring some community members, people like, I call them Dad, the Blind Social Center, Mr. and Mrs. Blair. We're honoring them. He's actually our Father of the Year. And we're honoring Dr. Eric Boone and Michael Watson and a few others. The community center that has the Pay What You Can breakfast every morning. We're honoring them, and we want them to know that I'm only 37, and we want them to know that people of my generation still do care. And people of my generation, I feel like we dropped the ball, in my personal opinion. When we look at the millennials of today, it's some rough challenges. And this event is very special and near and dear to me because my daughter lost her mom due to domestic violence August 29th. It'll be 3 years, August 29th. And this is special for her. And it would be special for so many other young ladies. I've been getting some great feedback for the event, and I can't do it alone. It takes a team effort. And I am asking and seeking sponsorship for this event. It is planned to be at the Genesis Convention Center. I am hiring a production company to have it totally professional. And like I said, we really want this event to kick off with everything we got. And for more information, you can go to our website at savageinternational.us. And you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/savage2savage. I thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Councilman Brown.
I would like to yield my time to Ms. Brenda Scott Henry. She has a very important announcement for this weekend. Thank you.
Yes, we should always be ready, but thank you, Council. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about a very special event that we have every year. This weekend, starting Thursday, we're celebrating our Clean Water Celebration. This is a 3-day event that we host. This is our 15th year doing this event. On Thursday, we have partnered with the Great Lakes Commission to host the Green Infrastructure Champions Workshop. Now, this is an opportunity for you to learn about green infrastructure. We've been doing a lot of this throughout the city. And you can even learn about the rain garden we have at City Hall. So if you're interested in learning more, please look on our social media or contact our office at 882-3000, and we can help you with your registration. The event starts at 9:00 a.m. On Friday, we partnered with the Field Museum in Chicago to host a native landscaping adventure. So this is a tour of some work that the Field Museum has done to integrate native landscaping into their garden. So they have a robust garden there. They've used native landscaping to enhance the retainment of stormwater. And then they will give you an educational tour of what's going on. The vegetables and fruit that they have there, they also use them in the cafeteria. So you'll have lunch in the cafeteria. The transportation is free. Contact our office at 882-3000 to get more information. We have about 10 slots left. And the most important event, celebration, is the Clean Water Festival. It will be held at Marquette Park in Area 5 near the lagoons. And this day is filled with free activities for you and your family to enjoy. We have canoe, kayaking, fishing education, creative arts, fitness. So yes, there's a yoga class starts at 11 o'clock. We have hiking. If you have a bike, come biking with us. We have a kids play zone. water quality education, so you can learn about the quality of the water at the Marquette Park Lagoon. And then we will have a display of other vendors that will provide environmental education to you, free of charge. So this is sponsored by the Gary Stormwater Management District. I just helped them organize it, but it's a great educational program as a part of it's a great education and fun for you to learn and enjoy our most valuable asset, which is Lake Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Definitely the event is always a great success and brings a lot of knowledge in how our waterways are so important to us. And I do plan on attending this week also there. At the last meeting, Councilwoman Wyatt, you had a question about I-65 being closed.
Right.
There are work that's going on our end, and it's not expected to reopen till September 20th. So they are active working on our end, so they're trying to cut down on the flow as much as possible of traffic there.
Good.
But it's scheduled for September 20th. For your knowledge and for the public knowledge that I-65, starting at the beginning part of Gary, will reopen on the 20th. Thank you, Councilwoman Rogers, for those remarks about the efforts that I continue to make sure we have a clean city inside our city. We see quite a few calls since the great article that the Post Tribune did went out. A lot of calls about people interested in how can they be a part of making sure that they help. A lot of contractors have called asking that they have their services available. So we have some other contacts that help us to make our city a better city. Even people that have called and say, if you can just assist us in cutting down something on a side lot, we'll maintain it. So we're happy about the traction that we have taken on with this. The Gary Cleanup Committee will meet this Thursday in the council lounge at 5:30. And we asking all that can to come out 5:30 to 6:30, just 1 hour, when we'll be discussing the next 5x5, which is inside the 4th district. But I'll be taking my cleanup even further. I'll be moving to the 2nd district between 4th and 5th Avenue. I'm working my way around. I do have a goal that I'm trying to reach at least 100 lots before this season is over. But I think I like the fact that the General Service Department, once they got through with some of their work, they came over and gave me a hand too. So it wasn't all me, but General Service pitched in too. And I appreciate those guys there, but I want to let them know that, I see the hard work that they put in. I'm willing to get dirty also with them. And even they have told me, if you're cutting after hours, we're not busy, just let us know that you're cutting. We'll come in. Didn't ask for any extra pay. They will assist. So, you want things to work smoothly as it can inside the city. Wish we could get them a big raise like tomorrow, but we know the circumstances does not present that at this time to do that. But we are working through some ways to just properly compensate our General Service Department, because they do work tirelessly around the season. We left one season with the snow falling. We went to the pothole season. Now it's raining, and now we're dealing with trying to maintain the grass. It's a small department that's trying to take on this big task, and it's a heck of a task. I challenge any one of you all, take out a couple of hours and spend with General Service, and you'll see these guys really work, and they work hard. And the job is not as easy as we think, just throwing some asphalt inside of a hole. It's not that easy when you're going from block to block, trying to make sure that it's done right. So I commend the General Service Department at the same time.
Yes.
Also, I'd like to send out my condolences to Mr. Comer, also echoing Councilwoman Brown, and to Tasha Allen, a former schoolmate, graduated my sister from Word High School. She passed away, and her memorial service was just this past Saturday out at Marquette Park. That would end it for me. At this time, we will go to, yes?
There will be an anti-violence march. This is an annual march that is held by a resident of the 6th District. And Councilman Brown always attends this event. You'll see his picture on some of the advertisement of it. But it's a anti-violence march honoring our murdered loved ones on Saturday, June 29th, 2019. And it's going to be right there, going to meet right there at the Bible Way Church of God's Word at 220 East 49th Avenue. Speaking will begin at 12 p.m. and the march will begin at 1 p.m. And this is sponsored annually by a 6th District resident whose name is Glenn Taylor, in honor of his son who was killed. And we would just like to bring awareness to the violence, especially in light of the most recent one. And it's so unfortunate. But Saturday, June 29th, at 12 o'clock p.m., 220 East 49th Avenue. And there will also be an opportunity for folk who would like to give to assist in the sponsorship to please contact Glenn Taylor at 601-397-9748. And we usually have the march, and then there are activities and food and whatnot afterwards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I think that was a very good announcement that you made there. Mr. Taylor and his wife does a tremendous job of putting this together, but they do need our help, and I plan on being there as always, and I want to help financially also. And I also want to just acknowledge the father-daughter gala that you're putting together. I think that's awesome. I think you should be commended for that. I was just having a conversation with a friend yesterday how important it is for fathers to be inside of not just your kids' life, but especially your daughters' lives. And we had a deep conversation about that. And I don't know if there's a limit on how many daughters you can bring. I got several. But I plan on bringing my daughters there and treating them like queens that day. So I plan on being there also. All right? Special and select on third and final.
CPO
Not special and
2019.
select, I'm sorry.
Mr.
Councilman Brown?
I'm sorry, before we begin, on the agenda, we have CPO 2019-36 and CPR 2019-05. And I was wondering if we could take both of those at the same time. One is, way up on the agenda, and the other one is the last item on the agenda. And since they go together, can we just put those two together? Would that be okay?
If there's no objection by any council members, I have no problem with it. Okay. So council pending ordinance and resolution on third and final.
CPO 2019-35, an ordinance to establish the boundaries of the Gary Land Company Historic District, sponsored by Ronald Ward, President of the Gary County Council, Rebecca Wyatt, Councilwoman of the 1st District, Mary Brown, Councilwoman of the 3rd District.
Mr. President?
Yeah, Councilwoman, yeah. Councilwoman Wyatt?
So I move for passage of CPO 2019-35.
It's been moving probably second. He was happy to second it. Overview at this time?
Mr. President, we had the overview earlier in the session.
Okay. Is there any other discussion by council members before we move to the public portion? Okay. Public portion is now open. Anyone would like to speak for or against CPO 2019-35? You have 3 minutes to speak on this ordinance.
Yes, good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Jim Nowacki. I live in the 2nd District, and before we get all teary-eyed over the Gary Land Company building at Gateway Park, let's remember that the Gary Land Company was a fully owned subsidy of the U.S. Steel Corporation. As a policy of the Gary Land Company, they were forbidden to sell property in the city of Gary and their subdivisions to African Americans. In other words, there was the policy of the Gary Land Company to not sell lots or homes to any blacks, any African Americans in this city, And that was for the entire time of their organization. They would not sell to a Brown or to a Rogers or to a Smith or to a Barnes. They would not sell to anyone who was African American in this community. So before we get all teary-eyed, let's recognize that this was the policy, that the building, after it served its purpose for the first 2 years, was moved to a site, I think, on Pennsylvania Avenue, and was occupied by a private entity. It was then moved to its present location. But we have to keep this historic building in a proper context. The proper context was, so long as U.S. Steel could make a profit in this company, in this city, so long as they could use this community for their profit, that they were very happy with it. And they at no time had any self-examination over the ethics or morals of their business practices. As a matter of fact, they didn't want blacks in this city until they needed blacks to come up and break the strikers, the U.S. Steel strikers in this city. And for 50 years, when the land company was organized, not one property in the entire city that was under the control of the Gary Land Company was sold to a black African American. And I think, while it's fine that we preserve this building, we have to preserve it in a context. And instead of us in this city being responsible for maintaining this U.S. Steel property, I would expect that this council, instead of looking in the pockets of Gary residents, should look right at U.S. Steel and say, cut us a check for that building. We shouldn't have to pay 1 penny to preserve it. It's your property, it's your history, and you should come up with the cash, especially when later today they're going to be coming out with their open hands, looking for this community to give them tax breaks. So, Mr. President, members of the council, just chew on it. Thank you.
Mr. Nowacki. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else? Right now, you have to talk about the ordinance. At the end of the meeting, you can talk about anything you like, as long as you have signed up. Yes. Okay. Public portion now closed. For the discussion, council members.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wyatt.
Wait.
She's first, wait.
I'm sorry. I'll look directly at Councilwoman Wyatt when I say it. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Wyatt, I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to look that information up, Mr. Nowacki, because I did not know that. And I'm want to do some research before I make any type of comment about it. And in light of that information, I think that, and if it's true, that we do need to do as you said and understand the context. History is our history, and there's nothing that we can do to change that history, but it's a very, very interesting perspective that you've presented to us on today, so I appreciate that.
Mr. President, if I may.
Now, Councilwoman Wyatt.
Yes. Last year, I believe it was, when we did the Black History celebration, maybe it was the year before, and I had read the book that Dolly Millender wrote about the Central community in Gary. And one of the facts that was in there is that a third of the initial residents of the city of Gary, what became the city of Gary, were African American. They were paid by U.S. Steel to construct the mill and to do that excavation and construction. Well, it may be true because it is and was a racist city and country. It may be true that the Gary Land Company did not sell to minorities. But I don't think that lessens the significance of the building being the first structure in the city of Gary. And for that reason, I believe that it should be preserved.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brown?
if we were to start putting buildings out that blacks weren't allowed to buy, we couldn't go in some houses, we couldn't go in some stores. In 1958, when my grandparents bought their house in Tolleson, they weren't even allowed inside the building. They had to sit in the car and buy it. So all this racial stuff, we're talking about historically trying to preserve something. You know, I'm not going to sit here and go round and round with people about this because we know what kind of country we live in. Most of our ancestors, when they came to Gary, they had to live in the Midtown area. There were a lot of areas in Gary that we could not go. So Gary wasn't as great as people thought it was. Glen Park area and a lot of other places, Miller included. So let's be real. We're trying to preserve a building. We're trying to support a historical society who's worked hard. Racism ain't going nowhere. We got to work through it. And we're not going to sit here and be stopped because one person decides they want to talk about some history about what we couldn't buy, because that has always went on. And it's going to continue because we have sick people in this country. However, we have to move past it, and we have to work together. Those of us that want to work together, great. Those of us that want to be fools, go over to the foolish section. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Any other council members? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Brown?
Yes.
Councilman Brown?
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell? Councilwoman Rogers?
Yes.
Councilman Smith?
No.
Councilwoman Sparks Wade?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wyatt?
Yes.
And President Brewer.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 6 yes, 1 no.
6 yes, 1 no. It passes on third and final, so ordered.
CPO 2019-36, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, authorizing issuance of the City of Gary, Indiana Economic Development Tax Increment Revenue Bond, Series 2019 U.S. Steel Corporation Project, and the provision of the proceeds thereof to U.S. Steel Corporation, authorizing and approving other actions in respect thereto, sponsored by Gary Economic Redevelopment Commission.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brown?
I move the passage of CPO 2019-36 on third and final reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Caldwell.
Mr. President, I move to amend by substitution CPO 2019-36.
Second.
Roll call on the amendment.
Councilwoman Brown?
Yes.
Councilman Brown?
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rogers?
Yes.
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sparks Wade?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wyatt?
No?
President Brewer.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 7 yes, 1 no.
Vote of 7 yes, 1 no. CPO 2019-36 has been amended and so ordered. Madam Clerk, we're adding CPR 2019-05 also. We're doing in concert together.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just amended.
Report out to the resolution. You can do it in one vote, as long as there's no objection, they can do it in one.
That was her. What she asked us.
Mr.
CPR,
President, oh, I'm sorry.
CPR 2019-05, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, approving certain matters in connection with the establishment of the Economic Development Area and the allocation area of the approval of the Economic Development Plan for said area, sponsored by Mayor Karen Flynn Wilson, City of Gary, Gary Redevelopment Commission, and Gary Plan Commission.
Mr. President.
Councilman
I move
Brown?
Passage of CPR 2019-05 on third and final reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. What we just did, we're doing both of these in concert together. They will be two separate votes on them, but they'll be talked about in one overview because they're both Go together, yes.
May I ask what the amendment was for CPO 2019-36?
We're finna go right into the overview now. Overview for CPO 2019-36 at this time, and then they'll explain the overview of the amendment also.
Can we get someone in from IT, please, to change the presentation? Maybe.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. President and members of the council, members of the public, I wanted to, while we understand that this is the overview for U.S. Steel, with the chair's permission, I wanted to place this overview in context. There has been a lot of, this presentation was done on Wednesday during the financial committee meeting, but we wanted to repeat it for individuals who were not able to attend. I certainly want to acknowledge Methodist CEO Greg Grady, who is in the audience, and others who have come tonight to see the presentation. We will make it brief, and certainly want to answer any questions you have, but this is the full presentation. So over the last year, we have been putting measures in place that have been reflective of a 2 to 3 year effort to right-size our finances. It's actually an effort that started in 2009 when the property tax caps were beginning to be phased in. We had a financial manager in a prior administration that was supposed to come in and reduce cost in a way that would fit the revenue of the city. They were not successful and essentially said that they could not cut their way out of the problem. However, there wasn't a full discussion on the generation of revenue. And so you'll see here that part of our efforts have been to generate revenue, and part of those efforts have also been the generation of revenue while we are while permanent measures are being put in place. And while I know that there has been a lot of discussion about a new administration coming in, a lot of these changes you will see are not necessarily particular to anyone being in office, any one person being in office, simply because we know that we have to have a balanced budget. So with that, we will hear from Curtis Whitaker, who will walk us through the city's finances. You will then hear from Joe Van Dyke, who will talk about the U.S. Steel presentation, and I will ask that he provide the changes to the ordinance that are before you, or the amendments that have been made. You will also hear from Brandon Comer, who will talk about the sale-leaseback, as well as Dana Bennett, who will outline the changes that have been made. And the last thing, there's about a $1.6 million that is factored in capital expenditures for 19. You'll see a listing of proposed uses for that. However, the final determination won't be made until the council makes that determination, because everything has to come before you. So with that, Curtis.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse my dress. I had an emergency that I couldn't get back home to change, so I do apologize. So as the mayor discussed, over the last at least 2 years, the city has been working on a financial plan to move it to a more firm financial footing. This is the plan, and I apologize because most probably can't see this, and I'm not sure if we have any copies, but if we do nothing in 2019 going forward, we will end 2019 $42.5 million in the red. We will end 2020 $47.5, 2021 $51 million in the red, 2022 54.7 million, and 2023 $58.4 million in the red. That's not sustainable and would not allow for anyone to function, the city to function in any way. So over the last several years, as I mentioned, the city has been looking at ways to ensure that the city remains solvent and on firm financial footing. So in 2019, the first slide that showed the red amounts suggests what happens if the city does nothing. And this slide suggests what happens if the city does at least does a number of things, one of which Dana Bennett will talk about, which is part of the financial recovery plan. The second of which is the ordinance that we're dealing with tonight, which deals with U.S. Steel. The third of which is the sale-leaseback transaction that was already addressed by this council. So in the prior slide, property taxes were about $26 million. In 2019, with the U.S. Steel investment and upfront or advance payment, the city expects to collect about $41 million in property taxes in 2019. Everything else on each of these revenue, these are all the rest of these items are revenue items, and as you can see, let me keep going here. I do apologize, this thing isn't moving. Nothing. This slide looks at also, like I mentioned, including the sale-leaseback transaction. With the sale-leaseback transaction in 2019, $30 million would be received in 2019, with an additional $20 million $5 million, being received in the year 2020. The expenses, the one thing that we looked at and wanted to do with the cash flows were to ensure that we were very conservative from a revenue perspective. So there are a number of projects and things that are coming down the line that we did not include in the presentation from a conservative perspective for revenues. But the things we did were to include additional expenses. So additional expenses are included here, and they're robust. The other thing that's here is $3.5 million started in 2020 of lease payments that are included in this document, as well as payables that are outstanding. In 2019, with those things that I discussed included, we will end the year with two things: a positive surplus, and it'll be for the second year in a row, in our revenues over expenses. But we'd also end the year for the first time in a while with an ending cash that's positive, that's not in the red. It would move from $7.3 million in 2018 to about $26,053 in 2019. In each of the years going forward, from 2019 to 2023, you'll see that there is ending cash balance as well as a net surplus in revenues over expenses because of the sale-leaseback transaction, the U.S. Steel transaction, as well as the financial recovery plan. So this is what happens. You've seen two things. What happens if we do nothing? We end up $42 million in the red at the end of 2019. But we have an opportunity to do something about that, and that's what this cash flow and forecast represents. Now I'll call Dana Bennett to come forward, and Dana will talk to you some about the financial recovery plan today.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So as the mayor and Curtis mentioned, there was a group of us that started to look at how do we put the city in a position where they no longer end the year in a deficit. What we knew is that with decreasing property taxes and decreasing casino revenue, that deficit was going to continue to grow and not be sustainable. So the group put together multiple initiatives to help us eliminate the deficit. It is a living, breathing, growing document. We've identified ways to enhance revenue. We've identified ways to decrease expenses. And we are continuing to add initiatives to it, take ones off that aren't working well, so that we, at the end of this effort, have a balanced budget. So currently, there are 35 initiatives on the financial recovery plan for a total reduction in the deficit of $15.4 million. We track every week where we are on those initiatives to ensure that either we are on target, or for those that are not on target, we are reallocating resources to get them to be on target, or considering whether they should continue to be one of the initiatives that we're pursuing. So right now, we have 25 initiatives that are on target with the impact to the deficit of $10.8 million. 2.9 million that are slightly off target. Either they're off their financial target or they're off their implementation schedule, to the tune of 2.9 million. So we look at those to reallocate resources to get them back on track. And 1.6 million that are either far behind its implementation schedule, or the numbers are not returning in the way that we had hoped. In those, we will consider whether they need to continue to be a part of the financial recovery plan and replaced by another initiative. In fact, there is one initiative that we've already determined that we are going to remove from the plan, and that has there's no dollar amount associated with it because I did not include it in the $15.4 million. Another breakdown of the initiatives is 16 of those initiatives are related to revenue enhancement
16 of the initiatives are related to expense reduction, and 3 of the initiatives are one-time cash infusions. The U.S. Steel transaction, the sale-leaseback, the sale of a couple of city-owned properties as we reduce our footprint, our physical footprint in the city. So we will be looking to sell a couple of buildings that now have city staff in them. I also want to point out, even though that breakdown isn't here, that there are also legislative initiatives. Some of them you are very familiar with. Not hear me. Some of them you're very familiar with. One in particular is the relocation of the casino and the new owner of the casino. So there are different facets of the initiative. They hit just about every part of city government and impact the city widely. This is just a sample of the project document that we are using to track our efforts. It lists out the steps of each initiative, what it will take to get that initiative done. The ones marked in gray are steps that have been completed. And as you can see on the left, the color coding to